Stricker is so accurate. His golf balls come with barcodes for inventory control. He's so accurate. Even Siri says, damn, that's precise. He's so accurate. The Loch Ness Monster asked him to keep it down because the ripples were too tight. And yes, he's also stable. He is so stable. Chuck Norris asked him for balance tips, and he is so stable. Even the Federal Reserve said, finally, some consistencies. Today, we're going to look at why Steve is so stable, so consistent, and one of the swings I believe you can learn a lot from. And this was a recommendation a few times. I thought I covered him, but I guess I used him just for one little event that I had on a video. But this is a full cause and effect on his swing. And yes, this is one that I would like you to at least try to copy some things, because what he does, man, you can all benefit from. So let's get into it. Okay, let's see if we can one take Drake this. And what we can see is Ivan Red on the left side is a spine angle. Gumby Green has that little back brace line to see any motion forward or back into the golf ball or away from the golf ball. And then lastly, Mellow Yellow is our plane lines, the right side of the screen. We've got a couple things to show you, but let's just focus on the left side first of all. And what we could tell is this weighting is definitely very toe based. So arches of the heels straight up to the sky, that we can see the centeredness of where his plane line is, and his spine angle runs right ahead of that. So we know we've got a lot of room to work with here because there is more spacing because of that. Now this typically results in somewhat of an upright plane, and what we'll see is he doesn't quite get as upright as that setup would allow. And how we know this is that left shoulder did come up slightly. So we look at the shoulder tilting, we can see that left shoulder did move up as it's not directly perpendicular to his setup spine. With the shoulder coming up, the arms can now get to that secondary plane line pretty good, because if he did maintain his tilt, let's say his tilt did a pretty good job of maintaining itself and it was perpendicular to that, we will see this hand be a little bit higher, which would cause him to be somewhat rerouty or pretty steep. So he has learned how to do this correctly, and it's not him sitting there saying, hey, I gotta get my left shoulder higher. It just happens because good players find a way to make it happen. Now the key thing is we do see that club on the forward side of his original centeredness, which will allow that spacing to occur, so he's not going to get trapped. Now on the right side of the screen, look at this. That's the top of his swing. So we see a pretty good shoulder turn, and we see those arms are out in front of the chest. They don't go back into no man's land. What's more important is we take a look at where that club shaft is. It is nowhere near parallel. Now remember, we would like to see that parallel to the shoulder turn. So it looks pretty good when we look at that club shaft versus the shoulder turn. We do see it's pretty close to each other. So this is a beautiful, connected, wide, short, quote unquote, short swing, but it's mostly connected to give it the appearance of being short. Back to the left side, let's look at the triangle check and see how that club will fall straight down. So we take a look, the club will just go right in between that triangle, pretty good, and it starts to get parallel to both his plane lines right in the middle. So we see we're not favoring any lower plane lines, so we're not shallowing it out, and we're not stuck over in Steepsville a la me. But then from this point on, we see the shoulder will start to tilt. That right shoulder will work its way under, which will get the hand slightly above the plane and the club below the plane. And the magic happens right here. We see the club will fall down. We see that shoulder tilting as we strike the golf ball. We see a pretty quiet hand action where the club doesn't flip on through, and the hands will be still ahead while he has maintained his posture. So he's still in his posture. He hasn't lost any room on that back brace line, and he is still in his red line. Now let's take a look at the right side, because this is a really important thing I want you to look at. So we're going to go to midway point in his backswing, right when the club is parallel. We can see the outside of his hand is this red line right here. Now once we get to the downswing, we can see when the club is parallel, it just matches there. So we have about a hand width and a little bit of motion. Now we have to see where did that come from. You go to the top of the swing here and we take a look at the hip line. Once we go into impact, we can see that there's this correct sequencing. So we lose about half of a hand width. So right now we have shortened our arc by half of a hand width. And why is that important? Because he is keeping this radius as wide as he can. He is not pulling things into the center, because by keeping it in the center of the hub for as wide as you can, guess what it looks like? This is a horrible bike wheel, but it's basically the spokes are trying to stay the same distance away from his radius, because if we can do that, less moving parts, less hand action at impact, less manipulation. But let's look at that shoulder tilt. It's very important. Let's go to the top of the swing here and draw that shoulder tilt and see how much shoulder tilt we actually gain. Now, tour average is between 15 to 20 degrees. Just past when he strikes it, we can see that it is sitting right in that range, 15 to 20 degrees. So the turn and tilt from top to impact is correct. We do suffer some shoulder tilt at the top to get his hands to reach that secondary plane line. Bottom line, this whole swing works upon itself. But just to show you what we're talking about with keeping the spokes the same distance, I'm pretty sure this gentleman needs no introduction. So what we're going to do is draw a circle around him, and let's look at how wide he gets. So we're going to draw where that club is parallel to the ground, and right when it's parallel to the ground as he strikes it. Can you see that difference there? This, ladies and gentlemen, is danger for the average Joe. You don't need to do this. You don't need to hold that lag for as long as you can, because guess what needs to happen? The hands and arms need to get going and sequence that in that very short amount of time. But lucky for Jon Rahm, he can tilt and bow his wrist at impact to get that incredible shaft lean. But most of us at this point, our club is already down to here. We have a 53-degree angle from Jon Rahm versus Steve Stricker's 29 degrees. So there's a huge difference on where the hands will work into the zone. And you basically want to emulate more like Steve Stricker, because there's less compression down at impact for the average golfer, which means less timing, less potential for errors. And that is what we're looking for. So what did that help you with? Did it make sense, or are you just walking away from this video saying, what the hell did I just watch? If that's the case, leave me a comment, but don't forget, hit that like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Fairways and greens. A huge thank you to these incredible supporters on the screen and to you watching this video. Your support helps us bring our golf curriculum to low-income children around the world at no cost to them, just like our location in Cape Flat, South Africa, in partnership with the Hillard program. Please like, share, and consider subscribing. Together, we can give the gift of golf to kids who need it the most.